Good evening, everyone. And David, thank you so much for that introduction and for all the work of David, everyone at Goodwin, for all of you who have helped us so much. Tonight, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and tell you about a personal story. The story takes place in Easton, Connecticut. It's a small town where I was raising my family. The year is 2004, and the story is about two boys who were entering high school. The first was Mikey. Tragically, Mikey was diagnosed with cancer. As you'd expect, his parents were devastated. However, his family was easily able to access the highest quality medical care, all based on science. Mikey's parents told their friends about what they were dealing with, and our entire town rallied behind Mikey and his family. Parents came to their home with cooked meals, drove carpools. The kids in our elementary school held bake sales on the weekends. And the whole time Mikey was sick, he received all the love and compassion that anyone with the disease could ever ask for. Well, 2 streets away, my son Brian was also struggling with a disease. But for our family, it was different. We looked for medical care for our son as Mikey's parents had, but unlike Mikey's parents, we couldn't find medical care that was based on science. Unlike Mikey's parents, I didn't tell too many of our friends about the disease my son was struggling with. To be honest, I was embarrassed, and I felt like a failure as a father. And our community didn't rally behind us. No cooked meals, no carpools, no bake sales. The disease my son struggled with was addiction. And on October 20th, 2011, I was woken up in the middle of the night by my cell phone ringing. And when I picked it up, I was told that my son had just died. He was 25 years old, and he hadn't used a substance in 13 months. And equally tragic, it wasn't just addiction that took my son's life. It was the feeling of shame he had every morning when he opened his eyes, a feeling like an outcast that caused him to wake up that morning, research suicide notes, write a note of his own, and take his own life, alone. In the days that followed, the only thing that kept me alive was reading that first sentence of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept what I just can't change. However, as the weeks and months went on, I began reading and thinking about that second sentence, the courage to change the things that we can. And with Brian in my heart, I began to research how to do so. I was shocked when I learned that addiction is the third largest cause of death in this country, behind heart and cancer. Every year, 150,000 Americans are dying related to the addiction of drugs and alcohol, and the number is growing every year. I was further shocked, in fact destroyed, all over again, when I learned that a body of knowledge existed that had been proven to be able to significantly reduce the number of our loved ones who ever become addicted. And another body of knowledge existed that had proven to be able to improve outcomes for those who were in treatment. Yet all this information was sitting in peer-reviewed medical journals, and hardly any of it was being used. As a businessman, I couldn't understand it. As a father, I was destroyed. And then I asked myself, why? The answer was clear, that for every major disease in this country, there was one well-funded national organization leading the fight to protect our families. Except no such organization existed for addiction. Well, putting all this together, I soon left my business and dedicated the rest of my life to this cause. And from this, our organization, Shatterproof, was born. When we started, I wanted to make the same commitment to donors that I had done in my business with investors, to use every dollar as efficiently as possible. So I first turned to my relationship and my friends at Goodwin Procter for pro bono legal services and expert advice. In the last 6 years since we formed, I could tell you firsthand everything that David said, I can multiply it by 100. Goodwin has been there for me every step along the way. For all pro bono, for our basic legal services to operate a nonprofit, but beyond that, all the expert advice. And I think David and his partners will attest, we're not a typical nonprofit. We have created many partnerships along the way that have required me calling someone at Goodman at 11 o'clock at night and saying, I need an agreement by the next day. And those partnerships are now culminating in us building for the first time in our nation's history a system to measure the quality of care of every treatment program in the United States. So everyone in this room and every parent across this country, when they're thinking about sending their son or daughter to a treatment program, will know, will have the information, which treatment programs are delivering quality care and which ones won't or are not. And there are many others that are helping us. JP Morgan Chase, McKinsey, and so many others that are doing numerous projects for us on a pro bono basis to help us grow and use our dollars most efficiently and with expert advice. In closing, I mentioned a few minutes earlier that when my son took his life, he hadn't used a substance in 13 months. So why did he take his life? I've never had to wonder. He told us in his suicide note, it's about not being treated like a human, he wrote, especially one that has worked so hard to get back to normal. Brian didn't see a world where he could be treated as normal, a world where he can develop a disease as a young man, get quality treatment, get better, and live a happy and healthy life. Well, Shatterproof exists with the help of Goodwin and so many others. Shatterproof exists to create that world for the next young man or the next young woman that comes along or the next family. I can't thank Goodwin enough for all their work every day and every step along the way that we've needed you. You've been there. And tonight, I can't thank all of you enough for listening to me. And I ask you in closing, please consider joining us in dragging addiction out of the shadows and into our hearts. I can't imagine a more perfect expression of humanity. Thank you.